This is the reading of page 369 to 371. Start with hard times in the Roman Republic. Firmus admires the old Roman ways. He likes things to be orderly and simple. He works hard. He believes in discipline and duty. All he wants is an honorable family and his little farm. He was born on the family farm and he expected to spend his whole life there. But things haven't turned out the way he planned. Ever a loyal Roman, Firmus had marched off willingly to fight Hannibal. When he returned, he found his farm in ruins. The olive trees and vines were burned. His home and tools were in shambles. His family could hardly grow enough food to survive. Where could he get money for new tools? Firmus held on as long as he could, but finally he had no choice. He was forced to sell the little farm to a wealthy buyer. Firmus took his family to the city of Rome, where he hoped they could find work. But things in Rome were no better. In fact, they are much worse. Firmus and his family have to share a dirty, crowded house with other families. Each family has to live in one room. Firmus spends weeks looking for work. Finally, he finds a job as a helper to the neighborhood baker. He is luckier than many of his friends. They have to live on grain handed out by the government. The baker isn't much better off than Firmus. He makes only cheap, coarse bread. That's all he can sell, because only poor men come into his shop. Rich men have their own slaves to bake for them. Firmus and his family hate their crowded house and spend as little time there as possible. Like thousands of poor Romans, they spend time in the streets and marketplace. They feel cheated. They are bored, restless, and unhappy. They look forward to the frequent holidays when they can see races and wrestling contests, as well as plays and parades. The government also arranges cruel, bloody fights to entertain the poor people. It's an unhappy way of life, one very different from life on the farm. Firmus had lost his independence. He no longer feels like a free Roman citizen. The Forum is the great public meeting place of Rome. There, poor men like Firmus gather to hear the latest news. They exchange gossip and jokes, listen to politicians speak, and argue about this official or that. Mostly, though, they talk about their own problems. What we need is land, said Firmus. Our fathers lived on the land. They led good, simple lives. They never had to be bored. I agree with you, says Balbus, the butcher's helper, but where can we get land? Can you afford to buy any? Can I? Can we find some rich man to sell us any? Half the men in Rome can't even buy bread. How can they buy land? Firmus frowns and scratches his head. Well, all the same, that's what we need. Why can't we have land? I fought for Rome. So did you, Balbus. Is this how Rome pays us back? There are so many rich men in this city. They eat dates from Africa and their wives wear peacock colored silk from China. Why can't I have just a piece of land and a little house? Who wants to live in this noisy city? I want to go back to the old ways. The Republic in Crisis. Thousands of men like Firmus came to Rome, and year by year they grew more unhappy. Veterans who had fought in Rome's wars were especially bitter. They wanted some kind of reward, power, or money for having fought. They were proud men, and they were becoming more desperate. Many Romans were losing faith in their government. Wealthy individuals owned or controlled most of the land. They expanded their large estates as victorious Roman armies captured more and more slaves and brought them back to Rome. Now, landless peasants such as Firmus flocked to the city, but they were adrift. Some Roman statesmen said land ought to be redistributed to those former soldiers and citizens. They even called for laws to redistribute land. But powerful landowners who dominated the Senate refused to give up their land and agree to such laws. Poor people felt increasingly hopeless. True, they had the tribal assembly, which had formed in the 4th century BC and was composed mainly of plebeians, but it seemed to help little. While the republic was supposed to run according to written laws, the laws were only as strong as men's willingness to obey them. Riots broke out more and more often. Rome had nearly a century of unrest and bloodshed. Military leaders began fighting each other for power. They promised soldiers land and money in exchange for their services. For the first time, Roman armies seemed to be more loyal to their commanders than to Rome itself. Sometimes a general would step forward and try to seize the reins of government. The Republic couldn't cope with the strong men who wanted to rule Rome by force. In 88 BC, Rome fell into a civil war that continued off and on until 82 BC. Consuls backed by armies battled each other. Thousands died in the fighting, and thousands more were put to death. The Senate was no longer able to rule and keep order. Senators simply tried to back the strongest man. So did the Roman people. They followed one leader after another. The boast of Rome, its organized law and its working republican institutions, had broken down. The Roman Republic teetered on the edge of collapse. And that's the end of reading pages 369 to 371.